Hello everyone, this is me again, Ryan, always here from Tokyo, Japan, in the Ghost Layers report. Well, this video is something that I've thought about doing for a while, but kind of put off because it's not easy to report on or talk about without people flying off the hinges and not wanting to really deal with this issue. Right now, as we all know, TEPCO pretty much has come to symbolize everything that's wrong with the nation of Japan. Ever since this whole nuclear meltdown situation, it's been pretty much daily of the things that are come out about TEPCO. Everything from cronyism to corruption, examples of weak regulation, and even empathy. So, after so long of this going on and so much coming out, it gets to the point to where you just see so much of it, and I take in so much of it that I don't really talk about all of it. But this one is one that I really finally think I need to do a video on. It's this problem that has been swept under the rug, often referred to as the nuclear mafia here in Japan. Now, since we are talking about Japan and we mentioned mafia, what we're talking about is, of course, the Yakuza. And nuclear, as we mean nuclear industry, especially TEPCO. Now, here's the way it goes, right? Now, I have a lot of different sources for this, and I could report on it from different sources, but I'm looking at the Atlantic for this. Now, the Atlantic has done some really good reporting on this in the past, so I thought I'd use them as a reference for everyone, right? Now, the Atlantic Wire, back in June of last year, talked about this. They got it from an expose done in a weekly magazine called the Shukan. They reported that TEPCO admitted that they could not account for 69 of its plant workers could not be located for radiation checks. 30 of them were found to not even have had their names recorded. Now, this, of course, raised a lot of questions about how the workers were recruited, how they were paid, how they were monitored for radiation exposure, or vetted, basically means fired, or checked out, before they were even allowed to work there, and they weren't watched or monitored very well. Now, at that time, the Atlantic also reported that several members, former and current, of TEPCO, who worked actually inside the plants, testified that many of the hired workers were Yakuza or ex-Yakuza members. One company supplying the firm of contract workers was known as a Yakuza front company. Now, when the Atlantic confronted, or the Bushan confronted TEPCO about this, TEPCO, of course, stonewalled this. Of course, I mean, you going to admit to this? To have business connection with Yakuza in Japan is a death kill for anybody. It ruins you. So, of course, they said, we don't have any knowledge of who is ultimately supplying the labor end of our outsourcing. We do not have organized crime exclusionary clauses in our standard contracts, but are considering it. Yeah. Okay? Do I even need to explain that one to you? Basically, they're saying, we don't know about it because we don't handle the hiring of labor from our outsourced companies. We don't exclude them from hiring criminals or people involved in gang activity. But, we're thinking about that one. Really nice, okay? Real things that stonewalled it basically said, we don't know. We know, but we don't know. Officially and legally, we don't know. But actually, we know. But, it goes on like that, right? So, there were a few things from some more underground Japanese news channels. You really got to hunt online and find them. I'll let you explore that one for yourself. But there are. You can go on YouTube long enough. You check out the other broadcasting methods on internet. You'll find it. They break these things down a bit better, right? Especially these quote-unquote fan magazines of Yakuza. Yeah. Right. But that came out, right? TEPCO has often been asked to submit reports about these type of things. In fact, Atlantic reports that 9 days before the meltdown on March 2nd, NISA issued TEPCO a warning for their failure to inspect key pieces of equipment at the plant and wanted the report on the matter by June 2nd. They never get that, right? So basically, by not submitting your reports on equipment, you're avoiding the log, reporting the log of who checks it every day. I know how this stuff works. I looked it up. They have to have a log. It's like any other thing, like when you work in factories or coal mines, which I know a lot about. I'm from West Virginia. But you have to keep a log of your equipment when you check it. You sign it, put your name on it, all right? And the numbers, the figure you recorded. If they resubmit that, all those names on that log will be there, and they'll show up Yakuza members will be on those logs because they got to sign it. They have to sign it. The foreman cannot check off that equipment's been checked every day so they can turn it on and operate it unless the man operating equipment has signed it and said it's cool. There's no way, all right, that they can get out of saying, oh, that guy was never worked for us when his names are on the logs of the equipment checks. That's why didn't want to report equipment checks. As far as I know, they still haven't done it, all right? But, it goes on and gets better, right? So in December, the Atlantic finally followed up on this. They got a great graphic. It's hilarious. But they first they review their new report about how Yakuza had ties, and we went over that. But that's only like the surface of it, right? They mentioned this new book that I really suggest you check out. It's been out for a few months called Yakuza and the Nuclear Industry, Diary of an Undercover Reporter Working at the Fukushima Plant. It's written by a former Yakuza fan magazine editor, Tomohiko Suzuki. Now, he reported on the business, industrial, political, and media complex in Japan known as the Nuclear Mafia. It's a complex of that, right? It's a mix of dirty things going on. Alright, so the book has got a lot real controversial. You should check that out, right? But it's not the industry ties to the antisocial forces, which that's what they call Yakuza in Japan. It's a PC word, antisocial forces, which means either the Yukudentai or the Fourth Reich neo-Nazis or the Yakuza. Alright, it's not that the ties were unknown. Engineers who worked for the firm for decades, had noticed the practice of employing Yakuza members at nuclear power plants, all the way back in the early 1990s and all the way through the 90s. Police sources also recognized Yakuza had been supplying labor to these plants for decades. Okay, so the Japanese police know this is happening, right? And there's no secret engineers in the nuclear industry in Japan know about this. Okay, basically the Yakuza treat the nuclear industry as a last resort for those who have nowhere else to go. And if you're in this type of business, you got no other way to make money. You start subcontracting out the nuclear plants. So it's not something that Yakuza like, and they don't consider it to be some honorable business to be involved in their line of work. All right. So they say basically there's two lowest forms of doing business in Yakuza. You work in the nuclear industry, or you sell women on the street. Yeah, so it's not even something that Yakuza like. Alright, but the TEPCO's making a lot of money off this. They save so much money. It's illegal practice for a subcontractor to subcontract their work out to individual subcontractors, and that's how Yakuza does it. They'll get a contract deal from a Yakuza front company. That Yakuza front company subcontracts it, and what the Yakuza guy who's got the subcontract in his hand sit there and does basically is subcontract that work to an individual, to where the individual becomes the employee and the company working for TEPCO, which means TEPCO can wipe its hands clean of even caring about this guy working at their plant in some of the most dangerous, sensitive areas of the plant. So that explains why they're doing it. Exactly. Okay, it's about money. It's about not taking care of your own people. All right. Now, this has been going on for decades. Officially, they call it unacceptable. Now, this controversy has become so great that after the incident, that TEPCO pledged back on July 19th of last year to try to keep the Yakuza members from participating in the reconstruction of the power plant and related projects. Clean house and kick them out, right? Hey, I got no problem with that, man, okay? That don't mean you'll be more liable to your own employees and you'll get these dirty influence out of the nuclear industry in Japan. Okay, fine. Go for it, right? Now, they claim they've been working with the Japanese National Police Agency, the JPNA, to accomplish this, but inside sources, according to the Atlantic, have reported that the agencies are dubious. It's interesting language as to whether they have had any real results because of the system and how it's done, right? That's exactly why they're having trouble if they have any real results, right? So if you come down on the Yakuza front company, okay, for and ask them like, who's your subcontractors? Who'd you been subcontractors to? Okay, all the Yakuza companies got to do is basically disappear. All right, they have disappeared. They're gone. All right, the subcontractors. Well, you ain't gonna find that record list, are you? Because TEPCO doesn't have a record of it because of the subcontractor, so they're not required to. They only have to keep the contact information with the original subcontractor. Right, so they disappear. They're gone. Right, subcontractor. What he'll sit there and do is say, okay guys, now he'll send some paperwork probably to TEPCO. It's the only way I can really see they're going to find out if they had any real success is to watch these application requests coming in from TEPCO and watch closely how they're filled out, because if this guy, these individuals, these subcontractors telling these individuals he has subcontracted to be individual employee owners of their own company, which their own company is their actual name because you're individual. Yeah, you see why subcontracting the subcontract work is illegal in Japan. We get into this, right? This is the problem you have, right? So what happens is when they need to watch those really close, because that guy has to take that sheet of paper that was given to him by the subcontractor and has to take it to TEPCO and present that he wants to transfer his contracted thrice removed deal over to an employee deal, or to a worker deal. Now, if TEPCO actually take those applications, start transferring back over, because supposedly the Yakuza are not hiring anymore, you can follow that paper trail and bam, you got them busted. All right, it's that simple. All right, but yeah, the agency is saying they can't. Inside sources say they can't really find any real results. Now, TEPCO has met with the police agency and 23 subcontractors back in July and created a conference group on organized crime. Right? So they route in the subcontractors who are Yakuza. Okay, it's just pretty brave move by Yakuza. They bring in the subcontractors with the National Police Agency, and they had a conference, talked about get rid of organized crime and all this. All I can say about that type of meeting or conference between like TEPCO, Yakuza, and the Japanese police is that that's kind of brokering. I followed Japan politics pretty close, and I've watched how they do things here. That's a broker. They're brokering something. They're cutting a deal there to get the subcontractors to move out of the way, let them fade away back, without implying that the higher Yakuza front company or the Yakuza organization in general, right? So the police are going to shelter that because they don't want to deal with that. That's way too much to try to come out. There's a reason Yakuza don't go down, because the police are pretty much lazy, right? And that also makes TEPCO look good, because we had a meeting with these people and we made some agreements and we're going to change our hiring practices, right? So Yakuza gets to fade away into the background, recycle themselves, and find a way to come back in there and hire people through a different method, right? That's probably more than likely is what's happening. They've made a deal that the Yakuza fade away, cycle the system, let it go under the rug, see if they can make it even more dirty and secretive next time they start pulling us off, right? So that's a little bit. I did want to focus on this nuclear mafia thing and exactly what it is, and I took the best sources I think are out there right now for it. There are others, so if you find something better, please, let me know. Pop me a message, wherever you view this video at. Pop me a message or some links or something. If you want me to look at some other things or possibly maybe do an update on it, right? But this is pretty damn serious in getting to safety, man. You can't have Yakuza running around like that. You can't have that type of labor practice. I mean, your workers get away with murder, and you don't have to watch things as close, and it's going to create more corruption because they got to hide those equipment check logs, which that compromises safety, right? And they get in trouble in that way. So you see how this just rolls, makes things worse, not better, right? Which is probably why I am a big advocate of following proper labor law and proper labor standards, and not letting those things slide under any circumstances. Even if your company is having financial trouble, you meet the labor standards, and you try to go at least one step higher than what the labor standard is. For those reasons is to keep your company healthy and maintain a harmony between your workers and your company, so your workers will be motivated and will basically do what you want. And it keeps down a lot of lies and cronyism and crap, because people are running around trying to save their own butt, trying to get around labor standards. So this is what TEPCO's been doing exactly. And you see decreased safety standards, Yakuza left and right, corruption everywhere. So when you let these people in your company, this is the type of things you deal with, right? So that's why labor standards, Japan, labor standards, the whole world, follow those. There's a reason that the people push for labor standards. It's not about trying to get the most money that they can out of people. It's because I think a lot of workers realize when labor standards are good and they're fair and are followed, and you have ethics when you follow labor standards, it benefits everybody. It keeps the company healthier because there's less corruption and abuse going on, so you can cut overhead and keep things safe and nice and produce the best product or service you can, because you do have a more even playing field, and you don't let certain elements get into your company because of labor standards. Exactly because of labor standards, it keeps companies healthier and better and less corrupt. And if you don't believe me, look here. You got the nuclear mafia going on in Japan. One of the lowliest things you can do as a member of the Japanese Yakuza is to do this type of work. Man, Anyways, that's enough for me right now. This video's starting to run a lot longer than I anticipated. So, as always, I hope you enjoy. like this video. Hope we get a few comments. Hell, even spread it around. Tell your buddies about it, right? And make sure to subscribe to my channel, the Ghost Letters Report. And hope to see you guys again soon, right? So, this is me, Ryan, here in Tokyo. Checking out.